This happened when I was 11 years old in the 6th grade. One day I was in my 6th period, which was gym, and we were running laps around the track. When I got to the end, I saw a 30-year-old guy waving at me with a weird grin. I couldn't tell who he was waving at though, so I just kept running. When gym class was over, I packed up and I was getting ready to go home. I was going to the gate in front of the school, and when I exited, I saw that guy again. He was looking at me again, but the grin had changed into an all-out smile. It really creeped me out, so I started walking fast. I walked away for a while, then I turned back to see if I was being followed, and I was relieved to find out that there was nobody behind me. After a while, a blue car pulled up to me and stopped. The window rolled down, but not enough so I could see inside. Although I couldn't see anyone in the car, I heard a voice, and it said,
"You look like a nice kid, and smart."
I just smiled awkwardly and said thank you. Then something terrifying happened. He said my full name. I was shocked. Although I wanted to run, I couldn't help but ask why he knew my name, so I did. After that, he rolled the window all the way down, and I was able to tell that it was the same guy from before. I turned and ran for my life. I didn't think the car had moved, but I didn't have time to look back and check. I was only 5 minutes from home, so I kept running. After I made it to my house, I was sweating, and my hands were shaking. I walked around the entire house to make sure the doors were locked, and the windows too. Then I eventually went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was thirsty, so I went to the kitchen to get some water. When I was there, I heard a sound from outside. I wanted to see what it was, so I peeked out the window. It was the guy from earlier, and he had something in his hand. I couldn't tell what it was, because the outside lights were off. I thought I was going to faint from fear, but I managed to run over to my mom and dad's room. I tried to open the door, but it was locked, so I banged loudly on the wooden door. They got mad at me for waking them up, but when I told them that there was a creepy guy outside, my dad went to check. I stayed upstairs with my mom. We waited for a few minutes, both of us shaking with fear. Suddenly, we heard a scream. It sounded like my dad, so my mom called the police. When they arrived, we saw my dad was holding the guy down on the ground. There was a kitchen knife lying next to him. I'm pretty sure that's what was in his hand when I saw him before. The man was taken to the police station. After 2 days, the police told my dad that the guy had been stalking me, lurking around my school, just waiting to make a move. Who knows what would have happened if I hadn't woken up that night. I might not be here. When I started school at a local community college, I was looking to make some new friends, because I'd never really had that opportunity before. I was the weird fat kid throughout elementary and high school. College was a chance for me to reinvent myself, to actually make friends and fit in for once. In college, no one cares if you're weird. You're all just trying to get through finals. I had a class with this one kid. Let's call him Creep, because that's what he was. Me and Creep had our ITE class together. I'd see him every day, but I didn't talk to him much. He just stayed in his corner of the room, and I sat up with my friend, an older lady that we'll call Jay. I had a Targus backpack. He saw it and said it was cool. Then we talked a little bit about our interests as we walked to our next class. He was a cosplayer, as was I, and we both enjoyed BBC programs, along with anime. He seemed friendly, but then I went on with my day. Things got uncomfortable after that. He started showing up everywhere that I did. He would invite himself to lunch with me and my friend Sasha. One thing I will say about him is that he was disgusting. We went to lunch one day, and he ordered a burger with peppers, onions, and mayo. Mayo is the bane of my existence, mind you, and he didn't use napkins. The thing smelled terrible, and he wiped it on his already dubiously stained pants. It wasn't pleasant to say the least. He kept popping up places and inviting himself to lunch, and I was just beyond done with him. I have a habit of attracting weird people. I don't know why. I was just ready to cut and run, if it came to it. He invited himself to lunch again when Sasha wasn't present. He said he had a crush on her, and I knew she had just been through a bad breakup. I told him to leave her alone, but he insisted. I said no, and told him to go away. He left after that, and I enjoyed the rest of my lunch. Then, the really freaky thing happened. I was leaving to go to my car one day, and ran into him. We talked for a bit, but I was really just trying to get away. He was insistent on talking, though. Eventually, I tried to excuse myself by saying that I was going to my car, and I'd talk to him later. He followed me. He said it was fine, and walked with me to my car. He then proceeded to tell me a story about how he got drunk and punched someone in the face. I did what any normal person would do. I looked him in the eye and said no. Then I got into my car and drove off. He left me alone after that. That wasn't the really creepy part, though. I learned this a few weeks ago. He had actually killed someone before. Apparently he got into a fight and stabbed someone. It was supposedly self-defense. The circumstances were more than shady, though, but the police in my area don't do anything. So yeah, I was stalked by someone who'd killed another person. Back when I was in first year of high school, I was part of this choir where we would sing the songs our school required us to sing, like the national anthem and some church song. To be honest, I wasn't the best singer, and I only joined the choir for the benefit of skipping class. The skipping class part was great, but all that staying up late for practices was kind of a downside, especially when it was before a big school event. One day, we had to practice in the school near the Botanical Garden because the place where we would usually practice was occupied by another group of people. Some of the members of the choir were kind of hesitant about practicing in the gardens because there have been a lot of scary stories surrounding that place. I, on the other hand, just wanted the practice to be over. We rehearsed until 8 or 9 p.m. At that time, there were only 2 gates that would be open if someone wanted to leave the school. The college gate, which was all the way across from where we practiced, and the track and field gate, which was near, but you had to pass through the garden to get there. Me being a lazy man, I decided to take the shortest route, while the rest of the choir wished me luck and went the opposite way. I believe that any place can be creepy as long as it's dark, and the gardens were no exception. I brought my phone to call my parents. It rang once before they answered. I talked into my phone, telling them where to pick me up, but there was no answer. I stopped the call and called again. Same thing, no answer. I called for a 3rd time, asking them to pick me up. I almost shouted into the phone, but like before, there was no answer. Finally, I gave up and decided to text message them. After I walked through the garden for another couple of minutes, I finally reached my waiting destination without incident. It was a creepy walk, but I was kind of relieved that nothing out of the ordinary happened. My parents came after about 15 minutes, but something was off. When they stopped the car in front of me, they got out and asked me if everything was okay, and they looked very concerned. I said that I was fine. They told me that they'd gotten my calls, and I asked them what they heard. They said they heard my voice saying "help me" over and over again. My boyfriend and I work as janitors in a middle school in Missouri. We work the evening shift from 3:30 p.m. till 12 a.m. We were not supposed to go outside by ourselves at night. The place where we lived was really dangerous, and some people called it Meth City. Loads of people on meth out there, so I'm a very paranoid person. I started working there around 3 months ago, and my boyfriend left his high-paying job to come work with me. My school had a position open after the last guy had a meltdown and walked off the job. I had to do the rest of his job that day, in addition to my own work. I had a fanny pack that I would take with me whenever I would go out. There were a few protective things in there, because I didn't like confrontation. We were working the night shift a couple days ago, and it was almost over. The last thing we had to do was take out the trash, and that's what we did. The dumpster was not too far from the school, but it was across the parking lot. It was located not far behind the backyard of a well-known meth house. We dumped the trash and began to make our way back. Out of nowhere, we saw a guy starting to walk towards us. He was really thin, maybe 6 feet tall, give or take. He was wearing a salmon-colored hoodie. I perked up and shifted my head in his direction to my boyfriend, who was talking to me at the time. He spotted him and went silent. We were still walking back towards the school, and the man was still coming towards us. I got a weird video of him. He was moving sporadically, waving his hands in the air. He was moving his arms around strangely, doing a flickering motion like he wanted a lighter. He was mumbling incoherently. I thought I knew where he was going. I remember my boyfriend had bought me a lighter to go with my safety items. I was afraid that my boyfriend would tell the man that I had a lighter, so I spoke up quickly and said, "We don't have a lighter." We had stopped walking at this point, unsure of what he would do. He turned around and started to walk the other way, all the while turning to look back at me. My boyfriend had started walking away, but I stood there and stared at the man as he walked away, and I gave him a stern look. When he got enough distance, he looked back and continued mumbling down the street. My boyfriend didn't think much of it, but I didn't like that encounter at all. I went to seminary when I was younger. I also played the piano. On the campus, there was a red brick chapel that was built in the late 1800s, where students, faculty, and the community would gather for worship services and other activities. I would often go there at night and let myself in. It had a main floor with a balcony circling the room. The piano was towards the front of the room, under the balcony, so I would turn on the lights for that section of the room underneath the balcony, leaving the rest of the room dark. I didn't want to waste electricity or call attention to myself. Over the course of my 3 years there, I played that piano at night with just that one light on literally hundreds of times. I only saw this once, so I don't think it was a trick of light or a weird shadow. I would have seen it before. One night, I was playing one hymn or another. I don't remember which. I thought I saw something near the front pew. It was shadowy, so I stopped playing and squinted. I saw a vaporous figure kneeling with her face on the seat of the pew, with her arms resting below her head on the wooden pew seat. I say her because I have a strong sense that it was a nun. I don't know why, I just do. That is odd unto itself, because it is a Presbyterian seminary, not Catholic. I don't know what it was, but a tingle went up my spine, and I packed up my sheet music and left immediately. I hope I didn't offend Sister So-and-so with my rapid departure, but I never saw her again.